A Necessary Evil, Chapter 3, Reunions. Jillian, I knew you shouldn't have bought this money pit. Now look at what's happened. Jillie's sister-in-law, Shauna, stood in the living room. A plop of water from the ceiling landed in her upturned palm as if to prove her point. It was a fixer-upper, and for the most part, I fixed it. Jillie didn't know why she felt the need to explain herself to Shauna. Ned the demon sat with his legs folded in a pretzel on the couch, upturned palms resting on his knees as if he were meditating. His eyes were closed, and he had an annoyingly serene expression on his face. Occasionally, his horns for ears would twitch slightly, like a dog might twitch its tail when having a dream of chasing cats. "Clearly," she answered curtly. Shauna eyed the room distastefully. Her gaze fell on where Ned was sitting, but she couldn't see him. "By the way," Shauna continued, "I saw your boss on the news. Just terrible." She eyed Jillie directly and asked, "I suppose that means you're out of work now, too." "Temporarily," Jillie grit her teeth. Shauna placed a hand on Jillie's shoulder sympathetically. "Jillian, why don't you give up this place and come live with Kevin and I until you get your life together?" Jillie shrugged Shauna's hand from her shoulder. "What are you talking about? My life is together." "Really?" Shauna feigned surprise. "Your boyfriend just left you, you have no job, and your house is falling apart." "Temporary setbacks," Jillie growled, eyeing Ned on the couch, wondering exactly how much of this he was responsible for. He sat serenely, his eyes remained closed. "And for the record, I left him, not the other way around." Shauna shook her head as if she'd just stumbled upon a lost kitten. "I can help you, Jillian," she pointed to herself. "I have a house, am happily married. My life has purpose. Let me guide you." "You haven't had a job in 5 years," Jillie pointed out. "That's because I've been busy finding myself," Shauna explained sweetly. "Kevin understands that this type of deep work takes time. As an empath, I have to frequently remove myself from the world because I just care too deeply." Shauna's finding herself meant regular month-long retreats in Palli, Greece, Ecuador, and the south of France. Maybe that's why Shauna and Kevin got along so well. It's easy when you only have to deal with the other person 6 months out of the year, Jillie thought to herself. Being hypersensitive and projecting your feelings onto others doesn't make you empathic, Shauna, any more than your inability to manage life's challenges. It just means that you lack stress resilience, Jillie retorted. Shauna shook her head knowingly, placing a hand on Jillie's shoulder a second time. "Oh, Jillian, I know you only say such hurtful things because you are in pain yourself." "Knock, knock," Kevin's voice boomed, peeking around the corner of the front door. "I'm not interrupting any gal talk, am I?" "No, we were just discussing Jillian's pain," Shauna offered. "Pain?" Kevin opened the door wider, taking a moment to lean a long, unopened ladder against the outside wall of the house. "Sciatica acting up again?" He eyed his sister, concerned. "No, and could you please shut the door? Otherwise Rufas will—" Jillie began. It was too late. Her orange tabby Rufas bolted through the front door. "Just great," Jillie complained, shuffling past her brother to chase her cat. "Not physical pain," Shauna responded to her husband. "Emotional pain." "Oh." Kevin shook his head uncomfortably. "Well, I wouldn't know anything about that," he confessed. Jillie nearly collided with someone as she crossed the threshold. Miles Endicott. "Oh," she stepped backward. "Sorry," she began before she saw what Miles was holding in his arms. Rufas snuggled up against Miles, purring. Miles sneezed before disrupting a contented Rufas. He held the cat out, the tabby's back legs dangling uncomfortably. "This your cat?" he sniffed. "Yes," Jillie grabbed Rufus and hugged him to her chest. "You're early," she continued, "and I didn't realize you were allergic to cats." "Up to 20% of the world's population is allergic to cats," he explained. "Oh, well, I didn't know that," Jillie replied. "So much for a tenant," she thought to herself. "It's okay," Miles sniffed. "I have allergy medicine in my bag." He motioned toward the rucksack on his back that Jillie had only just now noticed. "I'm allergic to lots of things." "Well, come on in and I'll get you some water so you can take your medicine." Jillie invited Miles in, closing the door behind them and setting Rufus down. Rufus eyed Shauna and Kevin cautiously. "Hey, pretty kitty." Kevin leaned over and reached out a meaty hand to pet Rufus. Rufus hissed and ran into Jillie's bedroom. "Takes after his mother," Shauna said curtly. "Who's this?" Shauna motioned toward Miles. "New boyfriend already?" Miles blushed as Jillie handed him a glass of water after he'd fished out an allergy tablet from his bag. "A new tenant," Jillie explained. "Really?" Shauna eyed Miles suspiciously. "How did you meet?" "On the bus," Miles answered simply. Shauna's talons dug into Jillie's arms as she pulled her sister-in-law aside and whispered, "On the bus, you invited a stranger into your home, and where is your car?" "Yes, and he's not a stranger exactly," after all, Jillie reasoned. She was fairly certain that this was Ned's doing, and while annoying, he didn't seem to actually do anything that was harmful. As if reading her thoughts, Ned looked up and smiled, waving a hand at the group as if they could see him. Curiously, Miles lifted a hand as if to wave back, until he noticed that no one else responded to Ned. He lowered his hand. "And about the car?" Shauna persisted. "Long story," Jillie answered. Shauna let out a long sigh. "Oh, Jillian," she shook her head. "You girls chat," Kevin interrupted. "A couple of my men will be here in a few minutes to see what we can do about your roof." For the second time that day, there was a near collision at the front door. "Whoa," a familiar voice boomed. "Sorry, Kev." The man backed away. "Darren," Jillie whispered under her breath. "No problem, man." Kevin grabbed the ladder and headed toward the side of the house. "What's going on?" Darren asked. "Roof problem," Kevin answered. "Need any help?" Darren offered. Jillie snorted to herself. Darren couldn't even change the batteries of their digital scale without her assistance. "Nah, I'm good, man," Kevin waved. "Good to see you, though." "No, it's not," Jillian thought to herself. Kevin disappeared around the side of the house, ladder in tow. Meanwhile, and also for the second time that day, "Who's this?" Darren pointed to Miles from the doorway. "My new tenant," Jillie answered. "Not that it's any of your business. Why are you here?" "Replaced me already?" Darren accused, speaking to Jillie, but eyeing Miles with a grim expression that broke into a wide grin moments later, as if he were joking. He was not. "Were you a former renter?" Miles asked, pushing his wire-rimmed glasses up on his nose to get a closer look at Darren in focus. He set the glass of water on the kitchen counter. "No, I'm her former boyfriend." Darren walked toward Miles in a threatening manner, as if to reclaim his territory. "So, former meaning ex, yeah?" Miles clarified, blinking. "Why, you think you got a shot?" Darren's imposing frame overshadowed Miles's smaller one. But when Darren leaned forward aggressively, Miles stood stock still, refusing to back up. Shauna, who avoided conflict like the plague, quickly told Jillie, "I'll just see if Kevin needs any help." And with that, she ran out the front door, all but slamming it behind her. "Darren, you have 3 seconds to tell me why you're here, or I'm calling the police." Jillie crossed her arms. Darren held up his hands. "No need to do that," he answered nervously. Any chance we can talk privately?" Jillie looked over at Ned, who at this point was now watching the scene with wide-eyed fascination. "Just a moment," she answered, sitting on the couch next to the demon that only she could see. "You've got my back, right?" "Always," Ned replied. Who the hell are you talking to? Darren asked. My better judgment, Jillie answered, not missing a beat. To the uncomfortable-looking Miles, she said, Miles, why don't you go look at your room and the spare bath while I chat with Darren? I won't be long. It's just down the hall to the right. Miles nodded and followed Jillie's gestures. Darren bumped Miles' shoulder as he passed, but said nothing. When they were finally alone, save for Ned, who was seated on the couch, one leg crossed over the other, and eyeing them with rapt attention, Darren asked, So you been good? Quit the small talk, Darren. I saw you being arrested yesterday. How did you get out so quickly? Yeah. Darren ran a hand through his thick brown hair. About that. Jillie squinted at him suspiciously. What about that? She demanded. I had a bondsman post bail for me, so... So, Jillie tried to connect the dots. Please don't tell me you're asking me for money. Asking? No. Suddenly, the dots connected themselves. You didn't, Jillie accused. I had to. I didn't have that kind of money otherwise, he whined. Jillie pulled out her phone and quickly pulled up her banking app. The savings account with $21,000 had been wiped clean. I have overdraft protection tied to that account, was all that she could think to say. Look, I'll give it back, I promise. I just need a little time, he pleaded. And after all, you probably should have closed that account and changed the password the moment I moved out. So really, that's on you. Don't you dare place blame on me for trusting that you would be a decent human being. Jillie turned her back on Darren, eyes stinging with tears. But when she faced the back window, all she saw was Shauna, watching sympathetically through the window, which was now suspiciously open. Ned, Jillie realized. I'll have it back to you in a month, Darren promised. Why didn't you just ask me? Jillian demanded. Would you've? Probably not, she confessed. Look, I didn't know what Joshua was up to at first, but I will fix this, I promise. He moved toward Jillian. Don't, she spun around. Come near me, she finished. Okay, I deserve that, he held up his hands in defeat. Can I at least explain? No, Jillie answered flatly. You can get out. Fine, Darren agreed reluctantly. I know my brother screwed everyone out of money and a job. I'm doing my best to make amends, but I can't do it overnight. Jillie said nothing. She was too angry. He opened the door to leave just as Kevin was coming inside. Kevin glanced at Darren's hasty departure and then his younger sister. You okay, kiddo? He asked. Yeah. Jillie glared at Ned, who was now eyeing the liquor cabinet disguised as a globe, wishing everyone would leave so he could mix a beverage with no one seeing a cocktail glass floating in midair. He already had enough trouble not leaving a noticeable seat print on the couch. Oh, Jillian, Shauna grabbed Jillie's arms. Jillie waited for it. Another speech from Shauna about how she was screwing up her life. To her surprise, her sister-in-law said, What a horrible situation. Don't worry. Kevin is fixing the roof at no charge, and if you need any money at all, just ask. Thanks, Jillie relented. In an uncustomary show of affection, Kevin punched his sister in the arm playfully. For Kevin, this gesture was huge. Do you need a hug? Shauna asked. Jillie was surprised. Shauna usually love-bombed you without asking first. Nah, Jillie wrinkled her lips. I'm good. Well, all right, Shauna agreed. But call us if you need anything. I'll be able to get your roof fixed for you in the morning, Kevin promised. Minutes later, Kevin and Shauna were gone, and Ned was busy twirling ice in a glass for his nightly bourbon. You okay out here? A timid voice asked. Jillie jumped in surprise. Holy guacamole, she screeched. You scared me. I forgot you were there. Yeah, Miles nodded sheepishly. I get that a lot. Sorry, Miles. It's just been a rough day. Jillie instantly regretted her comment. The room's fine, by the way. I'll take it, he began. But if I'm understanding the situation correctly, you'll be needing a job then, yeah? Sadly, yes, Jillie confessed. What do you do, if you don't mind me asking? I'm a writer, Jillie explained. Feature articles, sometimes advertorials, that sort of thing. How are you at marketing content, say, around environmental issues? What do you mean? Jillie was confused. Well, what you know about the environment? I know that it's important, Jillie cringed. Oh boy, Miles rubbed his forehead. Look, Jillie tried again. I am great at research, interviewing the right people, writing white papers if need be. What I don't know, I can get spun up on, fast. Miles's face brightened a little. Well then, that's just fine. Why don't I put in a word with my boss and see what turns up? I'm on a new project, and we might have a need for a content writer such as yourself. Well, thanks, Miles, Jillie was touched. You want to see a few writing samples, my resume? Yeah, sounds good. But before any of that, I've got a more pressing question for you. Yes, Jillie asked. Who the heck is that? Miles pointed at Ned. Ned and Jillie exchanged glances. You can see me? Yeah. Miles darted his glance between the two of them. No one seemed to acknowledge you, he addressed Ned. So I was worried maybe I was having an adverse reaction to my new allergy meds. Ned let out a boisterous laugh. No one has ever been able to see me before. Now 2 in the same week. Somebody upstairs has a funny sense of humor. Upstairs? Jillie questioned quizzically. Yeah, Ned was indignant. Why not upstairs? No reason, Jillie shrugged. Allow me to introduce myself to you, son. I am a necessary evil, a demon, if you will. Miles thought for a moment. Oh, I get it, he smiled. Ned. Yes, well, someone thought I needed a proper name. Ned eyed Jillie and shook his head. Miles, Jillie said quickly, I'll explain everything, but maybe you could give Ned and I a minute? Sure, Miles agreed. I can unpack a few things. Kinda hungry, though. Want to order takeaway or something? Sure, Jillie answered, confused. Miles seemed to have no problem with Ned the demon sitting in her living room sipping a martini. He also appeared to settle in quickly, asking to share takeout. Peculiar. Once Miles had disappeared into his room, Jillie turned to Ned. Well, Ned, you've really outdone yourself, Jillie chastised. What do you mean? Ned asked innocently. What do you think I mean? Jillie raised her voice. My annoying sister-in-law mocking my life choices, my brother fixing my roof out of pity, my ex showing up unannounced and stealing my money. The tenant is allergic to Rufas. This day has been a disaster. Ned thought a moment. What does mean? Jillie eyed him suspiciously. Funny how you perceive your day completely different from how I perceive it. A conundrum for sure. Why, Ned? How do you perceive this day? Well, Ned began. From what I could tell, your sister-in-law Shauna cared enough to offer you a place to stay if you needed, followed by money and support, while standing guard at the back window when your ex arrived to make sure you were okay. Jillie felt a little lump form in her throat. Okay, she finally admitted, that was kinda nice. Meanwhile, your brother will have a roof fixed tomorrow for free, even though no doubt he has to pay his workers to come out here, when they could be working somewhere else. Jillie's face was flushed. Yes, she nodded, that was nice, but... And here you have this nice young man who barely knows you offering to put in a good word for you and help you get a job. And Darren? Jillie questioned. Aside from the apology, Ned confessed. Not sure yet. After a moment of reflection, Jillie asked, Ned, do you think I'm an awful person? No. Ned shook his head and waggled a long-nailed finger at her. Not at all. But I do think that sometimes, Yes, Jillie persisted. Ned paused to frame his words just so. Sometimes, Jillie, just sometimes, I think you could do with a little perspective. In Chapter 3, Jillie has to navigate with many different personality types at once, several of whom she finds unpleasant. While she clearly identifies bad behaviors and what's wrong with her current situation, Ned points out some of the positives. While you can likely sympathize with Jillie's current necessary evils, this session is about reflecting on times where we resort to absolute thinking. For example, someone is all good or all bad, or exaggerating the severity of the situation. For example, this is a disaster. It is also about expressing gratitude for what we gain from life's challenges. Recall a mildly unpleasant event that disrupted your day. Journal about it, acknowledging how you felt, and describe what happened. Next, can you identify a few positives that came from it? What did you learn? Were you grateful for the support of a person or people around you? Reflect on what went right that day. Thank you for joining me.